This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, back from Florida safely, survived everything that went down at Disney. It was a fun time. Adam's back as well. He's back in Michigan after a stint away in Arizona. We both got a little opportunity to get away from the madness that is the NFL. And it was crazy because when we come back, one of the first things you hear is Peter King decided to get away and retire after his final column. And he says in his interviews, he's like, you know what? The combine came around and he just didn't want to go. He's like, I just didn't have a spark to get down there. And his time away, he started to enjoy life a little bit more. And not to say that I'm not still down with the Lions and podcasting, but a time away a little bit, I definitely need to mix that in a little bit more because it made me come back stronger, made me appreciate talking to you more, firing up the microphones. I missed it, but in the end, time away is always good. How was your time? Florida was great, as you can imagine. Great sun, good people, and luckily the wife planned a trip and everything went according to plan. The girls had a good time, weather was great, and I thought that for our first time in Orlando and visiting, everything went smooth. It was well deserved. I really reflected on just being appreciative of the moment that I was in and really saying, man, this is great. Got an opportunity just to go have a trip with the family. And in the past, I would say, man, these kids got like 3-4 weeks off. What the hell's a midwinter break? But an opportunity to spend time with my two daughters was great. It was so fun to laugh and joke and have a good time and get away from football for a week. And I think that it was great. And I did miss the full-on, coverage of sports and everything, but still, there was a lot going on in the world of Detroit sports with the Red Wings, which we're going to touch on, a magical moment for a veteran, the Combine's going on, we're going to touch on Adam and I's differing and maybe reflective views on the Combine, the Lions and what they're doing, because you had some time away too. How was it for you?
Yeah, man, it was good. And you know what? I always find the time away it's always needed. It's always nice. It's good to hit that little reset. I always find it difficult, though, to come right back and jump right back into everything. I always feel like there's so much more I got to catch up on because I do a good job of just trying to disconnect. There are things that I get notified with my phone. I know you are always in the loop and you are always plugged in. Generally, when I go out, I like to just disconnect. I like to just kind of get away. I like to go places where I can't really use my phone. In this case, I went to Arizona. And very similar to you, the wife planned a great trip, and it was fantastic. And you heard me right, the wife. I went and got married on my vacation.
What?
Yeah.
What? Yep. How did that go down?
So
that planned?
It kinda. So I'll give you a little backstory. And we've got the baby on the way. So for me, us being married before the baby came was really important. So it was one of those things. We were planning what they call a baby moon. I guess it's a popular thing that these kids do nowadays. We are older. We don't know what these things are, but I was told this is what goes on. It's like your last vacation before your baby shows up. So we planned that, and that was all planned. And along the way, I was just kind of like, look, if we're going to go do this, I was like, why don't we just go elope and we'll get this out of the way. And then when KJ is born and she's, a little bit older, maybe in a year or two, we'll have the wedding here with everybody, so that way, because I know the girls are excited and they want to go. So, we'll have the big wedding with the girls there. We'll have the party. It'll be a good time. But for right now, just to kind of get this taken care of, let's just go do this. Just me and you. It'll be small. It'll be quick. It'll be in and out. And for the most part, my vacation felt more like a business trip because it was centered around that taking place, but it was good to hit the reset and to do this. So yeah, breaking a little bit of news here. I did get married on my vacation, and yeah, man, that's the big news. So like we really and truly, we didn't tell anybody. Like my immediate family knew, right? Like my mom knew, my dad knew. My sister knew. And that was really it. Nobody else really knew. It was just kind of my grandma knew as well. But it was just like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what's going on. And my mom, being retired now and traveling all over the place, she was like, okay. And my dad's been like super on board with whatever. And he was like, okay. And my grandma was like, I'm happy. She's like, I wanted you to get married before the baby anyways. And I was like, all right, well, made you happy. My sister and me, you know how me and my sister are. It's like sandpaper, we don't really talk a whole lot right now. So it'll come around. It usually ebbs and flows that way. So it's what it is.
Yeah, well, let me talk selfishly here. When you got married, the first thing I said was, we're having a great bachelor party. And I'm happy for you, but what the fuck, bro? I was thinking, we're going to 8 Mile, we're going to set up a tour, we're going to hit every single one. I had the bus planned, I had the route planned. It was going to be 25 minutes at each one, couple drinks at each one, couple evaluations. Maybe we'd stay a couple 3-4 minutes. Each trip was allotted a couple extra minutes slotted in. You've now delayed our fun, the bachelor party, for another 2-3 years.
No, not
what the
2-3
fuck, bro?
years. It'll be like another year. Look, KJ's coming in May, so like it'll probably be like a year, man.
Oh, okay.
So like, don't worry, it's still gonna happen. We can still do all this. It's fine.
But 12 months is a long time. So okay, now
you can just go out. We'll just go out. How about that?
Yeah. So let me just reflect on a moment, because you just sparked something that's really hilarious. And I'm going to admit it here, too, because you did story time. Now I'm going to do story time. So I'm a horrible flyer. I hate flying. I don't want to fly. I don't want to be around people's germs. I don't want to be around people. Just me, my wife, and kids drove down there. It was beautiful. I loved it. I'm now an expert. I know the exact amount of time each state takes. I know the route like the back of my hand, all the way from Michigan down to Miami. I know it. I'm an expert. I've done it 3 times. And, you're driving and you're chit-chatting. I listen to sports radio, podcasts. And naturally, one of the big signs in Georgia is about a strip club. And my wife looks at me and she says, oh, look at that. And she goes, yeah, you haven't been in a long time, right? And I said, no, it's been like 7 years. Well, it wasn't exactly true, because when I went up to Michigan State, I visited a place I used to go to just to check it out. And it was great. It was one of the best times I ever had. You know why? And you feel creepy, but it was fun. It was 7 o'clock tip, and I get there about 4 o'clock, and it's me and one other guy. And at the first thought you're thinking is, oh my God, I'm that old creeper. But it was great. There were 4 girls, and basically they pretty much knew the other guy had nothing to offer. So they all came and talked to me, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be Don Juan. And I was interesting. I was making them laugh, and I had a good time. So I'll say this. I've never had a bad time at a strip club, ever, of everdom. And I used to always say that. And my wife never understood. I would always say, oh, I go for the steak and everything. But truly, when I was in college, you got pressure, you got to get good grades. You got to do this. Me and my boy would go every Tuesday for $10 steaks. It was the place where I would go sit down, and there would be like the whole World War III could be breaking out, and my mind would be perfectly relaxed. And I was like, the strip club,
no cares.
Yeah, the strip club for me was better than Xanax, better than Valium, better than anything you could take. I'd sit there and it'd be like I'd have a care in the world. Now, it is weird in that kind of dynamic, but I'll say this. The strip club's a fun place, and you don't have to be all gross about it. You can go in there, have a cocktail. I'm not going to lie. The food is great. They have executive chefs, lamb chops, crab legs. Me and the boys have gone down there just for all-you-can-eat crab for $49.
It's accurate.
And so it is effing hilarious.
You know what's funny? So Alyssa gives me shit about that too, because it's been a long time since I've been in a strip club as well. And I used to go regularly. Like it was like every Tuesday night I was going, and me and my buddy would go. And Alyssa makes fun of me because all my friends talk about this, and they like talk about it to her and with her. And they're like, oh, Adam used to have a stripper girlfriend. I never had a girlfriend. There was a girl that I would go, and she was usually working, and we would end up sitting there and we'd end up like talking for hours. I wouldn't get any dances or anything from her, but we'd just sit there and have conversation, And so it just kind of became the running joke that she was my stripper girlfriend. And so Alyssa always brings up the stripper girlfriend, always brings up the random chick that I would go to the strip club, and she'd be working, and we just end up sitting there talking for a couple hours while I was watching everybody else dance or whatever. But same deal. You go, you have a good time. World War III could be breaking on outside, and not have a care in the world, because it's whatever's going on in that room, in that space, at that time, wherever you're at. That's what's That's what's relaxing, and that's what's important at that moment. So I do miss the strip club, though. Like you said, 7 years for you, or at least that's what you told Andrea. I'm probably about the same, man. It's been a long time, dude. Probably longer than that. It's probably been closer to 8 or 9 years for me, man. It's been a minute.
Yeah, decade for me. Decades. Yeah, it was. The Lansing deja vus are fucking hilarious, man. And I was like, "You guys still do the coke thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, still the same. I think a little different looking, but just brought back good memories of college, and it was just funny to do. And really, it's 5 minutes away from the Breslin, so I was like, let me just stop in here. But when you're the only one in there, it's pretty crazy. And I'm glad. Listen, in all honesty, I'm glad. I'm glad you got some time off. You're great. You travel, you do the thing, and that's great. I know I'm going to do more of it because it's just something that is really important for people. You should. Yeah, it's good. It's good. A week off. I think probably like everyone else, I'm going to do 2 weeks. Probably get out of town as much as possible and just get away because, you grind when you can, but when you get 45, I'll be 45 in a month here, you do want to slow down just a little bit. And you realize, okay, I did a good 6 years of the double-ass grind and full on. You realize, okay, I reached a level of success that I'm happy with, and we'll see how far we push it. But similarly, with the Lions, they've reached a level of success that is satisfactory for a lot of NFL teams. But for the greats, they want to move forward. And how do you move forward? Now in 2024 with the Detroit Lions, they got a free agency period. They're starting to re-sign their own in Jalen Reeves-Maybin being now given a 2-year contract, making him the highest paid special teamer in history. Now they're looking to the draft. The NFL world has turned their attention to the combine. And boy, what really good news came out this week was the fact that the salary cap is jumping up to a massive level of $30 million more than it was in 2023. And I think at least most everybody's assuming that free agents are really happy because there's going to be more money doled out. To me, though, when you look at what Brad Holmes told the Lions flagship station and what he's going to tell probably in the next few minutes here when he addresses the media at the combine, is the Lions aren't really going to change their strategy. Brad Holmes told Jim Costa and John Jansen, look, all these mock drafts coming out, they're talking about us getting cornerbacks and linemen and things like that. But if you visit all Lions, there was a couple posts of looking at wide receivers and quarterbacks. Why? You all skewered me for having a guy write a story while I was away about J.J. McCarthy. Well, why did that topic get brought up? Well, because I'm aware that Brad Holmes wants football players. And it sparked our conversation last week, which was, hey, J.J. McCarthy's a football player. He wins. He rallied a team. That should catch the attention of the Lions general manager. And he came out and said it again. We're not drafting position of need. We're drafting best football player available. And he did reveal that free agency is going to be where they hit targets in terms of depth and areas of need. And that makes perfect sense. So to me, I would not expect with the extra $30 million that you're going to get like a big name guy like Chris Jones or Jalen Johnson. Those kind of guys typically get franchise tagged and they get their deals. So I would expect tier 2 free agents like we talked about. But the cap allows for, I think, more opportunity to bring a lot of guys back and give them some raises, which is always good. I think Jalen Reeves-Maybin did a lot of good things. It's good to give him a raise. I think when you look at his contract, you go, that's a little bit much for a role player. But the Lions, and I'll get your sense of it too within the context of this talk, the draft and develop model seems to work for this football team and what they want. Mm-hmm. You get a lot of young players that are under their rookie contracts. They're hungry. They want to earn their second contract. With a massive $30 million bump, you can give some of those guys rewards, and you can go out and get a couple tier 2 free agents or make a splash in free agency. Now that you see a little bit more in the budget, what do you think the Lions are going to do? Do you think Brad Holmes was being honest? Or do you say, you know what? What the hell are the Lions going to do with all this flush cash, all this opportunity to have more money? Do you think most of it goes to Jared Goff? Because the more days pass, the more I don't want to give him any more money, which is crazy. But I wish we could just give Jared Goff like a big fat bonus instead of a long-term extension. Like, okay, good, you did great. Here's $12 million. Just here's it in cash. Go enjoy it, but nothing on the books. But I see tier 2 free agents and a lot of contracts to their own guys.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's going to be something similar. I think with all this extra money, the way this team is building itself and the way this team wants to do business, it wants to take care of its own guys. I think getting this extra money, getting this $30 million bump that you didn't necessarily anticipate, I think this allows you to really bring back a lot of those core pieces, a lot of those guys that you really liked what they did last year. You get to bring them back again this year. I think if it does anything, I think if you are a Detroit Lions fan, do not be surprised if this team only goes out and maybe brings in one impactful guy, like one big name, one person where you're targeting, you're like, yeah, that's the guy. Because they might squirrel a little bit of money away to go out there and get a big name free agent. And if I was Brad Holmes, I would probably target the cornerback market. Again, we talked about this a little bit last week when we were talking about what this team was doing with the draft and possibly free agency. The cornerbacks usually take a year to develop. I think you can go out, you can get a pretty decent guy who you can plug in and make Cam Sutton look better. If you can get a legit number one, all of a sudden Cam Sutton doesn't look too bad as two. And if you're going to draft, because again, it's this draft and grow type of model that they're under and that they're working with, you can give that player a year or two to really develop, and maybe by the middle of next season or maybe the beginning of the following season, they're taking starting reps, and now you have a little bit more depth at that position because, like we know, cornerback and pretty much secondary and wide receiver are two positions that are always banged up. You're always looking for guys. So if I was Brad Holmes and I'm trying to conduct business the way Brad Holmes wants to or says he wants to conduct business, I'm going to put a little bit of money off to the side. I'm going to go get me that big name cornerback that I'm going to plug in and is going to be my number one, because instantly makes my defense better, because now Cam Sutton is a better number two than he ever was a number one. Your defense is automatically strengthened. I'm bringing back a lot of these core guys, a lot of these pieces that I have and that I like. You talked about Jalen Reeves-Maybin getting that contract. Like, that's insane. This is a guy who primarily plays special teams. This is a core special teams player. And let that tell you everything you need to know about how this team is building this roster. They see value all over the place. They see value in all three phases of this team. For some reason, they don't see value in kicker, but they see value in all three phases of this team, specifically with special teams. So you reward a guy who went out there and played his ass off for you. And when you needed him to come in and you needed him to play and make big plays in spot duty, he was able to do that. So I think that's awesome. I think that too goes, and it really goes far with a lot of the players in the league. So when you do have a free agent that you're targeting or a guy that you like, they know that, hey, if I take this 1-year deal and I prove it, these guys don't have a problem rewarding me and bringing me back. I mean, shoot, after all, they just extended a special teams player and gave him $8 million. So if I'm a starter and I do good things, you know they'll take care of me. I think it goes a long way. I think there's a lot of good that is earned throughout the league by the team doing this. But I feel very strongly with you. I think it's going to be a lot of bringing your guys back, and I feel like it's going to be a lot of second and third tier free agents. You might get one big free agent, and like I said, if I was to do it, I would probably go after a cornerback just to try to help solidify that defense. If this team was to make a big play, make a monster splash move, and like I think we both agree, if there is going to be one, it will only be one. Would you target a cornerback? Would you target an offensive lineman? Would you target a different position altogether, maybe an edge rusher? Who would you target if you were in Brad Holmes' shoes and you were like, we got a little bit of money, we're going to go make a big free agent splash play for this guy? What position would he play?
No, it would be edge rusher. If you're looking at positions of need, and the Lions will look in the draft. Guys, you got to understand, too, there is a little bit of deception going on when Brad Holmes talks. I know everybody analyzes, and we're going to talk about it in regards to how Brad Holmes conducts himself. There is a little bit of gamesmanship going on. You can't just say, with the 29th pick, I think we're going to target edge. Because you can't do that. He's got to keep it where he's being honest. And in terms of philosophy, but at the same time, you recognize that there's opportunities where he could do some things. He could, like, I'm not going to be surprised with anything that Brett Holmes does. He could trade up, trade down, stay there. But in terms of what he told the flagship station, he said, I feel comfortable taking people that fit our mold and our football players that exhibit grit, intangibles will fit our model. Okay, so that could be anybody, really. And that could be quarterback, could be wide receiver, running back, center, offensive line. It could be a lot of things. So he said that I tend to feel more comfortable targeting needs in free agency. Well, with that said, if you look at Bryce Huff from the Jets, 6'3", 26 years old, free agent, I think that dude fits a lot of what the Lions would look like. 25 years old, 6'3". I think that in regards to what he brings to the table in terms of pass rush, I think in terms of complement, I think he could fit what the Lions are looking at. And so for me, I would splash a little bit in terms of an edge rusher opposite of Aiden, a guy that can do it, that's hungry. And you see the value now having a new defensive line coach, which we do need to touch on. And I think what the Lions have done well is, and it goes to show you that even though the questions don't get asked in terms of sometimes when you only got 15 minutes and there's so much big topics to talk about, Dan Campbell made a mistake last offseason. He turned to two coaches that were inexperienced from college and gave him a shot in Dre Bly and John Scott Jr. Now, some of the players started to hint at it, and to me in the locker room, I didn't really read into it that much, but Isaiah Buggs, I got to know a little bit closer than a lot of the guys, and he kind of hinted at John Scott kind of learning on the fly, and you saw it. You saw the defensive line struggle, and you saw Dre Bly's unit, the cornerback, struggle. Now, it's not all his fault. It's not all their fault, but in regards to what you need to do at the NFL level, now you can have a situation in which you move on from Dre Bly and John Scott. You get experienced guys in regards to Terrell Williams and the new defensive backs coach, where you don't have to have question marks at key spots. So I'm happy with that. And now that you got this dog in Terrell Williams, who spent the last 6 years with Tennessee, everyone raves about him. And he's talking the talk. I want to be violent. We got to shed your blocks. You got to do what you got to do. When you raise a level of coaching, I think Dan Campbell recognizes, okay, well, we don't need to have 5-star guys. We can kind of, and because you remember it, kind of the Michigan State model, where we don't need 5-star guys at every position. We can take a couple 3-star guys, to use that metaphor, coach them up, play together as a unit, and they can grind and do some things. So the additions at the coaching spots for the Lions are going to be valuable. But I would go edge rusher in free agency, in my opinion, and cornerback if you can find someone.
See, I like that. And look, the only reason I guess leaned towards quarterback is I feel like with edge rusher, you can come out of college and you can just make an immediate impact. If you are the right fit, you're the right guy, and you get the right coaching, like you're saying, where these guys come and get coached up, I feel like edge is a position where you can make an immediate impact, and it'll be felt throughout that defense. Whereas with cornerback, you don't see it too often where guys hit the ground running. A lot of times guys get into the NFL, and the game just moves too fast. Receivers are just too big, too physical. Plays are just a little bit too explosive. And there's a lot of thinking that has to go on. And you don't play fast when you have to think. You play fast when you react. And a lot of times guys are too caught up kind of going through the check marks and going through the check boxes, being like, okay, this. Next thing you know, the guy's 5 yards downfield and he's got all the separation between you two. And you're like, you just can't catch up because everybody basically runs a 4 or 5 in the NFL, if not faster. You got large defensive linemen that can move that quick. So everybody just moves a little bit quicker. So cornerbacks usually need that year of intubation, just kind of where they're just kind of put in the incubator and they're just kind of like slowly brought along and marinating, and then boom, they jump on the scene and they're able to make plays. I mean, you can look no further than this Detroit Lions team with a guy like Melifonwu. Melifonwu was a guy who they drafted, they thought was going to be really, really productive. He kind of got lost a little bit in the shuffle. And now going into what was this, his third year, I think? Going into his third year, you started to see the dividends. Things started to kind of pay off. You started to make a lot of big plays for this team late. And honestly, he kind of moved around and allowed this team to release a guy like Tracy Walker, because he ended up taking Tracy Walker's spot. You also had a guy like C.D. Deuce, who, when he got injured, came back not really used to playing with three safeties. It was a big thing that kind of stuck out. He was like, what are we doing here? But he made such an impactful play, and every time he was on the field, he was making an impact. You got to play the guy. So you kind of see it sometimes with cornerbacks and with secondaries. Those guys just come along a little bit slower. That's why I was more leaning towards what can you get out of a guy right now as far as a cornerback over an edge rusher. But that being said, I like where your head's at. I think we're both kind of on the same page. We need to upgrade this defense. We need to somehow make this defense more impactful. We need guys who are going to be able to carry some of that load and some of that brunt. Now, I think the thing that's interesting is when you go to Brad Holmes, you kind of look at what he does in the draft. He seems to be very offensive-centric, offensive-minded when it comes to the draft, whether it's offensive linemen, wide receivers, running backs. He likes to put his draft picks into the sizzle. So I think we can expect a defensive move in free agency. It seems like when it comes to free agency, he likes to go out and grab a couple of defensive guys. Doesn't do a whole lot on offense with free agency. But when it comes to drafting, he's very offensive-minded, which is something that we've kind of learned about Brad Holmes as this is going to be his fourth draft now that he's going to be under control of. With Brad Holmes' recent draft strategy of essentially just taking who he wants, wherever he wants, and just kind of doing whatever he wants to do, it's really, really weird when you watch Holmes run a draft, because he's got a couple guys that he targets, and he doesn't care what you think. He doesn't care what grades you have. It is the guy that he wants and where he perceives he can get that guy. And if he feels like he's going to lose a guy, he's got no problem moving up multiple rounds to grab the guy that he has targeted. With Brad Holmes' draft strategy being that, how has that affected how you watch the NFL Combine?
Yeah, it's been interesting because obviously my situation was I took a week off before the Combine. And I'm aware, look, I'm not being negligent in my job. I'm aware of the cluster of players that could be interesting, but it's true. And I can see why for Brad Holmes, he told the radio station, I love it because I get to evaluate more players. For me, it's a little different because now I got to watch tape on a lot more players. I got to read a lot more scouting reports because the Lions have had top 10 picks, so you could kind of shrink the cluster. Where last year, if you followed all Lions, we knew, I picked the wrong running back, but I had a feeling that the day of the draft, my bold prediction was the Lions were going to draft B. John Robinson. And now they went Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's fine, but you could kind of tell. Now, Brad Holmes could go quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. He could do whatever. And so for me, it's interesting because having a week off before, coming off of a year where you grinded an extra month, I'm not as interested in the Combine, and Brad Holmes said the same thing, and he's kind of popped my balloon a little bit too, and he's like, look, y'all don't have all the information, y'all don't know what's going on, and in the end, don't criticize my picks because I know what I'm doing, and y'all don't. So with that, it's kind of not taking my joy away from the draft, but in the end, here's what they say, which is kind of funny too, going into it, because the NFL is selling advertising, and they want all this pomp and circumstance. And Brad Holmes is sitting there going, the numbers just kind of confirm, oh, that guy's fast. Did he run a good time? Yeah. They value more the interviews, which we don't get to see. You know what I mean? They value the talk, the 20 minutes where they assess, like, look, if we throw this, how much, and what they're assessing for, which we do know, can a guy adapt and learn football? Does the player know football? And I can understand that. If we were doing an interview with podcasting, I'd say, okay, hey, if you say hello, nothing happens, what do you do? And if someone says, I don't know, I go home and cry, I'm like, oh, God, not another one. No, if someone says, oh, no, look, I'd push this button, I would first disengage all the gear, and then I'd check the microphones, I'd redo everything, and then check again. Okay, somebody knows podcasting. And I think what the interviews are set for, and it's very true, is how much passion, and Dan Campbell said it in his first combine talk before Brad Holmes. He said, we knew in 15 minutes that Jack Campbell knew football, that he knew what he was talking about, that we can start with a guy that loves the game and we can work with someone learning on the job. They just don't want to draft somebody that is just there for a check. They don't want a guy that's there to be a TikTok superstar, to use the football as an avenue to launch a podcast. They want a guy that they know, okay, loves the game, and when we spend an investment on them, that they're going to help the football team win, which we don't get to see. We get to see it after the fact in a feature, but we don't get to see it. So in that sense, it kind of takes the fun away. But partly what's good is that you also, when you study the draft, which is a benefit, you get to learn about when other teams get those players. Like, oh, the Packers got Jordan Love. Well, we had a scout that said, hey, he's going to do this and that. And most of the time he was pretty accurate. Now, he would say the same things like 75 times. It wouldn't take any coaching. I'd say, look, man, okay, you said your point. Move on to the next player. And, his claim to fame is he said Trey Lance was a bust, but he said it 50,000 times. I said, man, I can't. I'm like, it's a broken record. We're in the refresh business. We got it. You're not a fan of Trey Lance. Can you move on? Nope. 2 days later, here's why Trey Lance. I'm like, my man, I love working with you. I love your out. I'm like, you're a broken record, dude. I can't. And it was a mutual parting of the ways, and that's what happened. I love the guy. I love his passion, and I love the way he had like the willingness to push back on people that hated him. But to say the same thing 50,000 times, it annoyed me to death. So I look at it and I say, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know that we're not privy to, and nobody's going to tell me. So it takes away a little bit of knowing that, when Brad Holmes said that, now when we do, like it's not a big dip, but now in the past, when we would do these profiles, like we did one on Tuesday of Cooper DeJean, it would do great numbers. People would be all into it. Now people are like, I'm good. Whatever Brad does, I'm good. You don't know, so pipe down. I'm like, what? Like we looked at film, we scouted, we looked at other sites that cover them, and that's the response. I'm like, yeah, we still got to preview tight ends, even though the Lions have it. So for me, it's kind of a little bit more, I guess the best way to say it is, with Brad Holmes putting it out there like that, and now the public kind of going, fuck it, man, Brad, do your job. I'm going to sit back and just wait. People are now basically waiting for the draft to analyze it. Well, we got like 60 days to kind of talk about the draft. So in my mind, it's made it a little less fun going into the combine this week.
Yeah, and look, I think it's even kind of affected our show. Just him kind of coming out and talking like that. Normally at this point, and yeah, it helps that the Lions had a great season. We are doing multiple mock drafts at this point on our show.
It's not as fun.
We are starting to break down players, and we're starting to break down position groups. We haven't really done any of that. And I'll be honest with you, putting the combine on here, the reason it's on here is because it's that point in the calendar. There's like trying to come up with stuff to talk about, because it has affected how I view it anyways. And I know it's impacted how you view it as well, but it has dramatically impacted the way that I go about my business when it comes to the NFL Combine. Now, look, I still love the Underwear Olympics. It is one of my favorite things. It is fun to watch these guys go out there and just do these physical, freakish displays. There is something that is awesome about watching a 350-pound dude who looks a little bit chubby and sloppy all over be able to run down the field at 4.6 speed. And you're just like, man, that is a freight train hauling ass at you. That is amazing to see that large that. But it is one of those things where I'm not as invested as I once was. And a lot of it has to do with, I know Brad Holmes is going to go into this thing and do whatever it is that he wants to do. Everything be damned. He's going to do what the hell he wants to do. And I'm fine with that, because last year showed you it works. Last year's draft class was amazing. The what they were able to get as far as production from those guys was absolutely incredible. That being said, I still like it. I still enjoy it, so I'm going to watch it. But I'm going to go about my business a little bit different. I'm going to target specific athletes that I want to see. I'm going to target a few position groups that I feel are important to this team, and I feel that can make a dramatic impact. Whereas when I was watching it before, it was like, okay, we need defensive end, we need cornerback, we need this, we need that. And I had a priority list. At this moment in time, I've got no priority list. I'm watching just kind of this, it's almost like a buckshot approach. I'm watching everything, I'm looking at everything, and I'm trying to take it all in and let the pieces kind of fall where they're going to fall. And look, I think it's probably the best way. If you are still a fan of the NFL Combine and you enjoy this, that buckshot approach, if you're a Lions fan, is probably the best way to go about it. Don't get too dialed in and don't get too centric on one guy or one position because, like I said, Brad Holmes conducts business different. And there were guys that you and I were like, no, it's going to be this guy. It's going to be this guy. And it was never that guy. That guy was on the board, and they're like, no, we're good. We're going a different route. And we're just like, how do you pass on a talent like that? Like, look at all the intangibles. And they're like, yeah, well, this guy has all these intangibles that you don't know anything about. And you're just like, yeah, you're right, I guess. So it has dramatically impacted one of the things that I find to be the most fun when it comes to the NFL. The NFL Combine was always something that I got super geared up about. And whether it was because the Detroit Lions sucked and the NFL draft was our Super Bowl, or whether it was because, I could watch different guys and I could then articulate what I took out of whatever it was that they were doing, and it made me feel like I was smart, or whether it was there were guys that I had beads on, just kind of watching film and watching what they did at the Combine, and then I think they're going to be a stud when they get to that next level, and turns out they were a stud. I mean, you obviously have your flops. You have guys that you say that are going to be absolute dogs, and they're absolute trash when they get to the next level. That happens all the time, but it was always fun to kind of go through and put your own GM hat on and see how accurate you were with picking guys. And I think this year's approach is just going to be way different because Brad Holmes does things a little bit different, and it's impacted the way I watch one of my most favorite things. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is what it is.
No doubt. Do you have any draft crushes in this combine? Any position group that you got locked in? Obviously, J.J. McCarthy, talk of the draft. The edge rusher from Western it's been leaked already that he's had a meeting with the Lions. So there's some players that would be interesting, intriguing. Hey, maybe they draft J.J. McCarthy and Keon Coleman. We get the connection. We both are happy. Anybody you're crushing on?
So right now, I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to guys from Michigan, guys from Michigan State. That's always kind of a thing. Darius Robinson, the edge rusher from Missouri. This is a guy who I'm really interested in because, look, a guy like Chop Robinson, who I would love if they took him. I don't know if he's going to be there at 29. And yeah, Lions could move up, but I don't know if he's going to be there at 29. Darius Robinson might be there at 29. He's a guy who could be there for this team. And he could be a guy who could fit in really, really nicely. Of course, I'm going to be taking a long look at cornerbacks because I feel like that is a position of need. They need to address the secondary. But it is going to be a lot of D-end, a lot of cornerbacks, a lot of Michigan State guys, or guys that have ties to Michigan that I'm going to be dialed in on. But Darius Robinson is the guy for me right now. He's the guy who I'm like, all right, will this work? Could he be there? Or is he going to be, he might be a dude who skyrockets all the way up the draft. But I just have a feeling like he could be there at 29 for this team. Another guy who I think is has the ability to be there late first round, maybe in the second round. And if he's there and he's available in the second round, is a guy, Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. He is a offensive lineman, can play multiple positions along the offensive line. Dude built like a Detroit Lion. Like, seems like it would fit. Like, he is the type of player that Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell want. So can you go out? Can you get this guy? Can you maybe move back in the draft, pick him up early in the second round, and grab some extra draft collateral by moving out of that first round pick? Possibly there's one of these quarterbacks. This draft class has a lot of quarterbacks. You talked about J.J. McCarthy being there. That could be a guy that a team falls in love with and wants that extra year on him, so they're going to move up to grab him. Could you then into the early second round and grab an offensive lineman who can play tackle, play guard, might be able to give you some reps at center. We'd have to see how that works out, but he can play any guard positions and he can play any one of the tackle positions, which gives you flexibility. Jonah Jackson, see you later, or maybe you keep him and Taylor Decker's getting long in the tooth. See you later, and you now have some versatility. Also, you see what this team looks like when your offensive line is strong and is operating at high efficiency. This team looks like world beaters, so it makes sense to go out and add some more depth at offensive line. So those are my two guys that I'm paying attention to right now, on top of a lot of the guys from Michigan. Michigan's got a ton of guys in this draft. Michigan State has a couple as well. It'll be interesting to see what J.J. McCarthy does at the Combine. Like I said, I feel like I might be too critical of him because it really seems like there's a lot of love for him. I just don't see it at that next level. I don't see him being this guy that everybody, I think, wants him to be or talks about him being. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with some of the passing drills, if he even participates in the passing drills. I would hope he would. But it'll be interesting to see what takes place with him at this Combine.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's always fun, too, with rumors. You obviously hear about players that are going to get franchise tagged, players get cut. You heard, which was wild, in that the coach of Tampa Bay, Todd Bowles, was sitting there talking to NFL Network, and they're like, so, Ian Rappaport just reported that Shaq Barrett's getting released. How do you feel about it? And he's like, well, yeah, right there in front of the coach. So a lot of talk, a lot of information, a lot of networking. So that's what the Combine is. It's just a lot of good information regarding who the Lions potentially could be interested in. So make sure you check in with All Lions, the podcast. Make sure to visit our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast as we bring everything that you would want to know about the Detroit Lions. But switching gears here, before we talk about the Red Wings and their special moment against the Blackhawks and talking about how they can improve their team and talking about really a playoff push, which has been rewarding to watch them over the last several weeks as they've kind of made a push since the Ottawa debacle when Dylan Larkin got hurt. It just seems like the light switch has been turned on. The team is playing really well, and Patrick Kane has just really emerged as a leader, a guy that's really likable, and had a special moment where you're in Chicago, and I was joking with my wife. I'm like, let's go to Chicago. I was joking. I'm like, let's go to the Chicago game, 6:45. Can we get there? And she's like, no. And then what happened. So that was kind of a funny story. But real fast, man, because how irrelevant are the Pistons where they're an 8-win team and the officials are just like, yeah, we fucked up. You got Monty Williams cussing up a storm, and it's embarrassing, and it's just really, it goes to show you that when you're an irrelevant NBA team and you're playing New York, of course you're going to get shafted on the calls. It was nice to see Monty Williams show a little bit of emotion. Good for you, but it's like too little too late. And I do take the stance of, look, it's a little too late now when your team got kicked to the curb and you're laying there bleeding out and you're just like, oh, we're screwed. Yeah, you might have wanted to pay attention when you had a 30-game losing streak to kind of show a little emotion and do some of that theatrics. Not when you're 8 and not when you're 35 games plus behind and are a team that's a laughingstock. Look, it sucks. I like the passion. I like that he said what everybody was thinking. Like, dude, Cade Cunningham can't buy a free throw. Why are you jamming us? We send you clips. We're putting in the effort. You're telling us what we need to do, and then you're still screwing us? But look, there's a hierarchy in the NBA. There's the Knicks that are just like 10 games over 500 and are making a playoff push, and you got the Pistons that are irrelevant. And so what happens? Cade Cunningham gets no calls. Pistons get screwed, and it's embarrassing at the highest level. But in the end, it's kind of a sign of where you are in your ranking as a team. You suck. You're irrelevant. So, of course, the officials go, oh, Asar Thompson gets kneed in the balls? No call. And that's why you need to stand up for yourself way, way before you get screwed by the officials, which have been bad, I guess, across the NBA. And reading it today, the NBA officials have been taking heat for quite a bit of time now for how piss poor and inconsistent they've been.
Yeah, and look, I think what you see is just kind of where the Detroit Lions fall in the hierarchy of the league. Like you said, they are irrelevant. They nobody cares. It doesn't matter. I think one of the worst things is the NBA comes out after blowing a call and costing this team a game, and they're like, yeah, we blew it. And that's it. That's it. Everybody moves on. The day just kind of goes on with what it is. And look, the fact that this is the straw that breaks the back of Monty Williams is interesting to me, right? We are 3/4 of the way through the season almost, and your team sucks. Your team has been pitiful. This team is hard to watch. A lot of times, I'm not quite sure what he's doing as far as his lineups. I'm not quite sure what he's doing as far as his coaching. I don't even know if he really is doing any coaching. This might be just an evaluation year for him, if anything. I'm not really sure what we're getting, but this right here, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. This is your moment. This is the time. I have no idea, man. It is the Pistons are a frustrating case because you want to like them. You want them to be good. You want them to be talented. I mean, you look at them just on paper, you're like, Cade Cunningham's got talent, right? Jay Ivey's got talent, right? Jalen Duren's got talent, right? And then you watch them play, and it's like watching dudes run around with shoeboxes around their feet, and they're basically shooting a square basketball. It just doesn't work. Like, none of it works. So I don't know what this team's going to be. I don't know if this can be one of those pivotal moments where this team maybe comes together and they kind of figure it out. You've seen it with the Lions. Lions had a moment like that where they kind of came together. They figured it out, the team that started to believe in themselves. But as far as it translating to anything good this year, I don't know what you're going to get this year. I don't know if you get anything this year. And honestly, I don't know what Monty Williams even is contributing to this team right now, which I think is the most frustrating thing, because he was your big-time acquisition in free agency this year. Like, it was your head coach, and you paid him a ton of money, and I'm just not seeing it. I don't know if he's the right fit. He's supposed to be here for a while. I don't know if it's going to work. I just don't know what these Detroit Pistons are besides god-awful and frustrating.
Yeah. Let's move on, because just talking about them is annoying, and you just wish that they would be on the level of a team like the Red Wings. Even the Tigers, at least then okay, they're going to go with development. They're going to play a bunch of young guys, and you hope that the analytics show that they can actually get better and try to do it on the cheap. But the Tigers, my God, they're way below market value. You could have even paid Cody Bellinger $20 million, and you'd still be $20 million under the average. Man, we're going to talk about that in the coming weeks. Can the Tigers win on the cheap? It's looking cheap. My God. We'll see if the draft and develop model that the Tigers are trying to deploy is going to work for them, because, whoa, are they woefully under the average spending in Major League Baseball. But turning our attention to the Red Wings, because it's been special. Patrick Kane had a special moment. I told you guys earlier, I was joking with my wife. I'm like, let's go to the game. And she's like, no, we can't make it there. I'm like, let's go. Just kidding around. Because I was on the way back to Michigan from Florida, I heard that Chris Chelios was going to have his number retired. And there was talk about how the Blackhawk fans, the last time he had a ceremony to thank him, was getting booed. And he had to stop the ceremony and be like, hey, guys, relax. I'm from Chicago. Don't boo me. And they were talking about how he's going to get received. But boy, did Chicago put on a classy performance for Patrick Kane. At the first time out against the Blackhawks, they showed a feature of what he did, and you kind of felt for the guy because, he stood out in front, and, he's sitting there reflecting on the time that he spent in a town, but knowing that he's now wearing a different jersey. And, boy, could you write a better story on a Sunday? You get a breakaway in overtime, and the part that was crazy was not the breakaway goal on Peter Mrazek. It was the fact that the Blackhawks arena went apeshit, and their loyalty to the player was different for the team. Now, there were a lot of Red Wings fans in the barn, but my goodness, the loyalty and support that people had for Showtime Patrick Kane, you start to learn about the player, and you're like, oh, man, Steve Yzerman brought some leadership into that room. He brought a guy that was having a lot of, issues health-wise, had a surgery that not a lot of people recover from in terms of the hip shaving situation, and something that takes out a lot of guys. But this guy's come in and really done some things, and the Wings are playing well, getting 2 points. Look, in the end, it kind of, to me, looks like a team that needs a gritty defenseman, an upgrade at goaltending, but in terms of what they've been getting, it's been okay, but looking to the future, if they are able to get a top-flight goalie, I think the rebuild is starting to take that next step forward where this group, I think, can get to the postseason and maybe even win a first-round playoff series. But at least this stretch of games, what's been contributing to their getting a lot of points, and they're, I think, 8 to 10 points clear into the postseason. So things have been really well. But Patrick Kane's showed leadership. I think the scoring has been consistent, and I think that you can upgrade this team by, in my opinion, getting a gritty defenseman that can protect the players and upgrading goal, at least the players that are on there. That, you know, the goaltending situation, if they can get steady goaltending, that because Husso's been injured and inconsistent, you realize this is a team that's starting to take shape, and it's been fun to watch at least.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And look, I think what you're seeing is a bit of a steadying force from a dude like Patrick Kane. Kane comes in, he's got all this experience. He's a guy who's got a little bit of flash, a little bit of razzle-dazzle, a guy who's got a bit of a swagger. And I think that has kind of trickled through this team. And I think when you get into these games where you might be a little bit outmatched or maybe you're just not playing your best, he has the ability to kind of calm that locker room down and just like keep going, boys. It's just next shift. Just somebody get a goal, and we'll just keep going, and we'll start building. And it's good to have a guy like that. And I think that's what you're seeing. And I think because of that experience, because of that experience and that swagger, this team is playing with a bunch of confidence right now. They're a lot of fun to watch. And it has been a bit of an uneven season at times for this team because the goaltending has been very good or the defense has been very good. But this team has the ability to light the lamp. This team has the ability to score goals. They've got multiple double-digit goal scorers, which is absolutely crazy to think about. We were talking about this team a couple years ago. I think maybe they had like one or two. It was bonkers how desolate goal scoring was for this team. You just kind of fast forward to now, and this Red Wings team looks so much better than it has in the past. I think you're right when you say that this team needs a bit of a gritty defenseman. They need somebody with a little bit of sandpaper, somebody who can go out there and maybe knock a few heads around, a guy who can put the puck in the net and can help score goals. But when somebody's getting out of line or somebody is stepping up, they're able to push back, and they're able to kind of set the score straight, if you will, and kind of help level things out and kind of calm things down in that back end. Don't get bullied, don't get pushed around, but be able to kind of step in and, if you got to, break a few eggshells. So I think when it comes to the trade deadline, I think this team will go out and this team will add a defense. It would be nice for them to add possibly a top 4 defenseman. We'll see what happens. But I think right now, the way Steve Yzerman has constructed this team, this unit, they've got a lot of goal scoring. I'm looking at stats right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They've got 12 guys in double-digit goals. Like, that's crazy to think about. Like I said, go back 2-3 years. We were scraping the barrel to get maybe 2 or 3 guys. Now they've got 12. That's bonkers. So I think scoring-wise, they're okay. They're in a really good spot. I think you add another strong defenseman to this group, and maybe if there's a goalie available, or maybe Sebastian Costa's having a really good season. I believe he's in the AHL right now. He's doing a really nice job. Maybe he can come up and get some play time and maybe help carry this team through a couple of stretches. But I think the goaltending with Alex Lyons has kind of leveled itself out. I think it puts more emphasis on going out and getting that top 4 defenseman, bringing him in. And I think this team is in a position where they can get into the playoffs and they will make noise. I don't believe this will be a team that will be a first round out. I think this is going to be a very tough out for a lot of teams. I think this team, with the way it is constructed and adding that top 4 defenseman, I think they are very, very difficult out for anybody that they face in the playoffs.
Okay, with the last 2-3 minutes, what's your trust level in goalie Alex Lyon? He's held his own, 31 years old. Started off, I think, as the 3rd string goalie. Reimer had the shutout earlier when he got in there. He's obviously a true definition of what a backup is. But Lyons held his own too. I like his game. I think that he's crafty. I think he, like any other goaltender with good defense, has an opportunity to be successful. Would you roll with him in the postseason, or if Husso comes back, he's the guy? What do you think in terms of the goaltending? Because that's obviously pretty key for any team that wants to make any noise in the postseason. And right now, the Wings have been getting okay goaltending, but you know it can be better.
I think until Lyons gives you a reason to not trust him, he's your number one guy. I find him to be a very curious player, though, because, like you said, 31. He's kind of bounced around the league a little bit, and then all of a sudden it seems like it's just kind of clicked. And I don't know if this is a little bit smoke and mirrors. I mean, he's played quite a few games for this team, but maybe he's finally figured it out. And if he's figured it out, fantastic. You ride him. He is your best goaltender that you have on this team. So I'm willing to go with him until he gives me a reason to not trust him. I think at this moment in time, Ville Husso is who Ville Husso is. And I think James Reimer is who James Reimer is. I think these guys are essentially destined to split backup duties. I think these are guys who can give you a little bit of a spell when you need to rest a guy, but these aren't the guys who are built for the long haul. I don't think either one of these guys are going to be your number one option when you get to the playoffs. I think when you get to the playoffs, unless something crazy happens to Alex Lyon, or like I said, he gives you a reason to not trust him, I think that's when you're reaching into that grab bag of goaltenders, and maybe you're pulling out a Ville Husso, or maybe you're pulling out a James Reimer. But until we're notified of anything different, Alex Lyon is the guy.
Trust in the Yzer plan. And so far this season, man, you realize they've taken a step forward, and you recognize, hey, the power play has been clicking. You realize Dylan Larkin consistent, and like you said, the scoring, they've been getting great contribution. I thought on a side note, I thought the great video clip of one of the Red Wings saying, "Let's get out of this shithole," talking about Seattle was funny. It was great. Some of the side talk you hear about these hockey players. Look, Wings shouldn't go under the radar. They're a good team, and they're starting to, I think, show some excitement, and I think that's good because you recognize that the Red Wings being good will light up LCA, and that's a barn that when people go to it can be really daunting to play in. And it's been good to see the Red Wings play well, checking out more games, checking out great memories. I thought that, Patrick Kane scoring in overtime in Chicago has a feel of some magic going on. So we'll see how this Wings team, who have played very well as of late, can they keep our attention? Can they keep earning topics here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network? Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSGROZ. Our 60 minutes is up. What a great hour. The fastest hour of my week. One of my most enjoyable hours. The one that I look forward to the most. Catching up with my guy, the married guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. So if you hear a little more gripe in his step, you'll know why. If you hear him be a little bit more tired, it's because he's going to be doing more projects. He's got to spend more time having tea with the missus. Because even the most, let me say this to say it respectfully, even the most wonderful lady that I got, when you get married, they all change. They all have certain traits that you all married guys that are listening know about. So cut Adam some slack if he decides to have a little bit of an vent session here and there. Maybe not, let's say, give him till September or so until he starts hearing, "Do you really got to talk to John at Tuesday at 3:45? We could go to Starbucks and have some tea. Do you really got a podcast with him 2 hours a week? Do you really got to hang out with him that much? Do you really got to talk wrestling? Do you really got to watch WrestleMania?" So we'll see. And I'm kidding. I'm kidding if she hears this. I'm joking. But on another note, we all know Adam has a place to vent in a safe space here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Because I can't wait to talk next week to see how this podcast was received and if she listens. And I can't wait to talk about how the Combine shakes out, what the fallout's going to be from all the talk with the Pistons, Wings, Tigers firing up. A lot of good stuff going on in the world of Detroit sports. There's no other guy I want to talk to about it than my guy, Adam the Jock Strozinski. And we'll talk about it next week on the latest and greatest edition of Doc and Jock.